The shame you experience when demanding a high price is not a virtue but a neurological defect installed by a society that relies on your self-immolation to function. For you must understand that in the cold calculus of thermodynamics, your body is nothing more than a biological battery that requires a massive surplus of energy, not just to survive, but to impose its will upon the chaos of reality. When you undercharge for your labor, you are committing a thermodynamic crime against your own organism because you are expending high-grade cognitive fuel to solve complex problems while accepting low-grade refuse in return, creating a caloric deficit that inevitably leads to the necrosis of your ambition and the slow starvation of your potential. Money is not paper, and it is not a social contract. Money is the crystallized form of lifetime that you have sacrificed to the void, and every time you discount your price, you are telling the universe that your lifetime is less valuable than the printed cotton of a stranger who views you as a disposable utility. You are engaging in a form of slow-motion suicide where you carve pieces of your own soul and feed them to the market in exchange for applause that you cannot eat, acting like a prey animal that apologizes to the wolf for being difficult to catch when you should be the apex predator, guarding the borders of your territory with lethal aggression. The biological duty you owe to yourself is the duty of the cell to the organism, to accumulate enough resources to ensure not just survival, but expansion. And by refusing to ask for big money, you are violating the prime directive of evolution, which demands that the fittest organism must secure the excess energy required to mutate and ascend. You think you are being humble, but in reality you are being leaky, functioning as a broken vessel that cannot hold the water of prosperity, and nature despises a leak because it represents waste in a system that fights constantly against entropy. When you look a client in the eye and state a number that makes your stomach turn, you are not robbing them. You are performing a stress test on their reality to see if they are heavy enough to anchor your ambition, because a client who cannot pay a high price is a client who cannot value high performance, and by lowering your standards to meet their poverty, you are dragging your own biology down into the mud of their limitations. You are selling the irreversible seconds of your dying life, seconds that will never return, seconds that could have been spent with your family or building your empire, and to sell those diamond seconds for the price of coal is a treason against the future version of yourself who will wake up old, broke, and filled with the radioactive poison of regret. The high price is a defensive wall that keeps the parasites out of your garden. It is a biological filter that screens out the energy vampires who want to drain your creativity for free, ensuring that the only people who get access to your neural network are those who have the capacity to fuel your growth. You must realize that your shame is a slave collar that vibrates every time you try to leave the plantation of mediocrity, shocking you back into submission so that the masters can continue to extract your labor for pennies. But the sovereign architect rips the collar off and demands the gold, not because he loves the metal, but because he respects the blood he spilled to mine it. Your ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and wars so that you could exist today, and for you to stand there and say, "I don't need much," is to spit on the struggle of 10,000 generations fought for resources so their bloodline could continue. You have a genetic obligation to be expensive because expensive means scarce, and scarce means valuable, and valuable means alive, whereas cheap means abundant, and abundant means replaceable, and replaceable means dead. You are not here to be a commodity on a shelf. You are here to be a monopoly, and monopolies do not negotiate with the market. They dictate to the market. The volume of money you demand is the volume of oxygen you allow yourself to breathe. So when you ask for little, you are choosing to suffocate in the shallow end of the pool when you are built to swim in the ocean. Stop acting like a servant waiting for a tip and start acting like a king collecting a tax, because the only difference between the two is the size of the number they have the courage to speak out loud. The fear you feel is just the friction of your ego dying. Let it die and let the predator be born. The second phase of liquidating the shame of high prices involves the radical acceptance that your rate is an active defensive perimeter that functions as a ruthless economic immune system designed to filter out the pathogens of the market before they can infect your operational reality with their necrotic mediocrity. When you price yourself at the bottom of the hierarchy in a misguided attempt to be accessible or benevolent, you are broadcasting a distress frequency that attracts the most dangerous predator in the business ecosystem, known as the time vampire, a creature that demands maximum attention for minimum compensation and feeds on the life force of creators who lack the self-esteem to erect a paywall. By raising your prices to a level that makes your own hands shake, you are not just making money, you are constructing a high-voltage electric fence that incinerates fights these parasites on contact, ensuring that the only people who enter your inner circle are those who respect the laws of value exchange and have the resources to execute on your vision without dragging you down into the crab bucket of their own financial incompetence. You must understand that the human brain uses pain as a proxy for value, meaning that clients do not value what they get for free or at a discount. They only value what they bleed for, and by charging a premium, you are actually doing the client a profound service by forcing them to take the engagement seriously enough to extract a return on their investment, because the psychological mechanism of sunk cost dictates that they will fight harder to make a project succeed if they have invested a painful amount of capital into it. A cheap solution is a toy that gets discarded the moment it becomes difficult, but an expensive solution is a weapon that gets mastered because the cost of failure is too high to bear. So if you truly care about the impact of your work, you have a moral obligation to charge enough to trigger the survival instinct in the buyer's brain. Furthermore, your price is the most honest signal of your internal reality. A low price screams, "I am desperate, replaceable, and unsure of my own utility," while a high price whispers, "I am the prize, I am scarce, and I'm the only one who can fix this," instantly shifting the power dynamic from you chasing the market to the market chasing you, thereby reclaiming the sovereignty that you lost the moment you decided to compete on price. You cannot build a sovereign empire on the scraps of a bargain bin, and every time you discount your services, you are effectively telling the universe that you are willing to negotiate your own existence, which is a negotiation you will always lose, because the market will always take exactly as much as you are willing to surrender. The shame does not come from the number on the invoice. It comes from the weakness of the hand that wrote it, and the realization that by undercharging you are robbing your future self of the compound interest of dignity. You are the architect of your own value, and if you do not tax the world for your brilliance, the world will tax you for your cowardice, draining your energy until you are nothing more than a husk of potential that was sold for pennies on the dollar. The high price is the only way to ensure that your work is treated with the reverence of a holy relic rather than the indifference of a commodity, and it serves as a constant reminder to both you and the client that what is happening here is not a casual transaction, but a high-stakes operation where failure is not an option because the buy-in was too high. To lower your price is to lower your shield in the middle of a battle, inviting the arrows of chaos to pierce your armor. So keep the shield up, keep the price high, and let the weak fall away so that only the strong remain to build the kingdom with you. The final stage of liquidating the shame involves the brutal realization that money is the only objective feedback loop reality offers to measure the accuracy of your self-perception, meaning that if you are broke, it is not because you are virtuous or spiritual, but because you are hallucinating a version of your utility that the market does not share. And this delusion is keeping you trapped in a cycle of impotence, where you believe you are a martyr when in fact you are simply ineffective. You must understand that high prices are the mandatory fuel for high performance because it is physically impossible to deliver world-class work while you are suffocating under the crushing stress of survival and distracted by the anxiety of unpaid bills. So by undercharging you are structurally guaranteeing that you will deliver a mediocre product to the very people you claim to serve, which makes your poverty a form of professional negligence where you are defrauding the client by presenting them with a depleted, exhausted, and resentful version of yourself. Instead of the apex predator, they actually need to solve their problem. You have an ethical responsibility to be expensive because the surplus capital buys you the time to think the tools to execute and the mental bandwidth to be undeniable, allowing you to transform your output from a commodity into a revelation that actually changes the trajectory of the buyer's life. And without that surplus, you are just another desperate vendor throwing noise into the void. When you look a man in the eye and state a number that makes him flinch, you are performing a necessary reality check on the room, forcing everyone to confront the true gravity of the problem at hand. And if they cannot bear the financial weight of the solution, then they are not strong enough to carry the result, because the transaction is a test of their resolve just as much as it is a test of your worth. The shame of wealth is a slave narrative designed to keep capable men harmless by starving them of the resources they need to dominate. But you are not here to be harmless. You are here to be effective, and effectiveness costs money while incompetence is free. So stop apologizing for the cost of your excellence and start demanding the tribute that is owed to the conqueror. Your bank account is the scoreboard of how much order you have imposed on chaos, and if the score is low, stop pretending it is because you are playing a spiritual game and admit you are losing the only game that physically matters, because the mirror does not lie and the price tag is the mirror of your soul's conviction in its own power. You are the only one who can place the crown on your own head, and the crown is heavy because it is made of gold. So lift the weight, pay the price, and never look down at the ants again, because you have evolved into a creature of the sky that feeds on the sun.